to Human Ascension with Ellie. Today we're going to delve into some poetry. Some very enigmatic and complex and contradictory poetry. In fact, it might be one of the most thought-provoking and paradoxical pieces of poetic literature ever examined by scholars. The poetry or poem that I'm referring to is called Thunder Perfect Mind, or some people call it the Thunder Perfect Mind. I just tend to say Thunder Perfect Mind. It was discovered among the Gnostic texts or scripture in 1945 in a place called Nag Hammadi in Egypt, when a group of construction workers who were just going about their ordinary business of building happened to come across an ancient clay pottery kind of selection, many of which contained previously unknown writings. Some of those writings predate the canonized books of the Bible by hundreds of years. And some of those writings also claim to have been written about the true accounts of the disciples of Jesus, implying that the accounts that appear in the canonized text may have been kind of re-authored, I guess we could say, or re-engineered in some way. So these texts claim to speak about the way things really are, the true nature of reality and the true nature of humanity and of spirituality, the true messages from Jesus. And of course, these writings at the time that they were made and distributed around the time of Jesus were considered to be heretic, with anyone having been found in possession of them often being murdered. Now, some of these texts do predate the known dates for Jesus by hundreds of years, and that in itself is kind of a bit of a question mark. But Gnosticism and the beliefs around Gnosticism are very closely linked to the discovery of these documents and other writings from around the same period. And they do date back as far as 300 or 400 BC. So those that were threatened, if they were ever found to be in possession of the Gnostic texts, and they were labeled as being heretic, some of them hid texts in order to preserve them over the course of time. And I do expect that there will be more Gnostic writings that we find as history continues to unfold into the future. The Roman Empire generally was opposed, and of course the Church of Christianity was very much opposed as well, because some of these writings directly conflict with what appears in the Bible, which of course is what makes the Gnostic texts such a fascination to me and others. They are beautifully, gently written, and they have such simple messages in them. But I know that having read the Bible from cover to cover, I was just left with questions and doubts, but mostly questions, when I started to read the Gnostic texts word for word and look at them as deeply as I can. They kind of opened up something in me which they feel real. Now, this is just a perspective, but they have an element of truth to them. That's the way they make me feel when I read them. And as complex and hard to understand as some of them are, for example, today's poetry, it has an interesting effect on people, I think, who sit and listen and try to understand. So I have been examining these various writings that form the Gnostic texts, and also these in particular that are known to be or referred to as the Nag Hammadi Library of Gnostic literature that was found in Egypt nearly 80 years ago. And each time I read a slice of the Gnostic wisdom here, it seems to open up a brand new world of awareness to someone who's listening on a show like this or on my Ellie Dream Cylinder channel. So I feel as though I'm tapping into something with the audience as well, and I'm really grateful for that. For me, it certainly has. It's certainly opened up a window to something, and I'm still trying to understand that. And that's the reason why I am 100% dedicated to covering every single word of Gnosticism that I can find. And most certainly the entire Nag Hammadi Library of writings. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Not exclusively, I'll be looking at other things, but I definitely want to make sure I get all the Gnostic stuff looked at because I find it really fascinating. So, so yes, the writings are very gentle, but they do seem to pack a punch. And when it comes to their messaging, and I think that they pack such a punch that that's one of the reasons why they were so fervently banned by the church. They presented a real risk to the status quo, and they do contradict status quo religious doctrine significantly with such simple messages. And so in those early days when they first were circulating, or when Christianity was forming itself, they became a very dangerous piece of writing to be in the possession of. This was at around about the time of Jesus. So far, I've covered the Book of Mary, which is a beautiful book of wisdom in which Mary Magdalene is said to have been told the truth about the world by Jesus directly. She found peace in those messages, realizing that all of humanity lives in a world that was deliberately designed to invoke fear and hatred and sadness and greed through a series of dark forces, 7 dark forces, that must be overcome in order to find the hidden truth within. And Mary realized that the way to fight the darkness or the dark forces and truly defeat it once and for all is to allow it to fight itself. Because as soon as we get out of the way, when it can no longer fight the light and fight the goodness, it will begin to fight itself. And that's how it's going to finally die forever. It's a beautiful message and seems to ring true. And the 7 dark powers also were very relevant to the modern day. They probably are, they're eternal. They kind of exist throughout time. I then covered the Book of Thomas, a very simple book, but incredibly profound in its messaging as well. In which Thomas discovers once again a direct message, with direct messaging from Jesus, that the whole concept of religion is designed to keep humanity away from its enlightenment. That's sort of uncanny, isn't it? To keep us busy worshipping traditions and routines and giving meaningless sacrifices and offerings to idols that either don't exist or don't care. And that the only way to recognize the truth, once again, is to stop and realize that we are the God inside us. We're it. And that God is more than just a deity who lives in the sky and either loves us or hates us. God, and God is not something that we should be worshipping specifically. God is energy, the energy of spirit and matter multiplied by the frequency of light. And it very much boils down to the Einstein theory of E equals mc squared. The E equals mc squared factor. And that is that we are a combination of spiritual energy and material energy multiplied by the frequency of light. And that is who we are. And that we are all interdependent, humans, animals, trees, and even the things that we don't consider to be alive or to have life. Everything that exists is part of us, and we're part of it. Such an incredible book, a very brief book, but with a big punch. And then most recently, I did a 2-part series on the Apocryphon of John. This is the Gnostic Gospel of John, which is entirely different to the Gospel of John that appears in the Bible. And the Apocryphon of John speaks about the creation of life and the world and humanity. And what it claims is an alternative but true story of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden, in which the goddess Sophia defied the rules of the universe quite innocently because she was just an enthusiastic chickie. And then by doing so, she sparked a chain of events that have led to the current day. And it completely kind of leaves us wondering about what might be the real messaging in the Old Testament of the Bible, because the book of John has overlap with the Old Testament, particularly when it comes to the creation of the world and the creation of the early world, and also Adam and Eve in particular, the creation of humanity. Those first few books that make up the Hebrew Bible and how they may have been mistranslated. And then, of course, I've also covered the story of Barbello, and I think some people prefer to call her Barbelo, but I feel Barbello trips off the tongue for me far easier. Maybe it's the Australianism. And Barbello is the first emanation coming from the Creator. Barbello was the very first thought that the Creator had of, this is the Creator, the one who created itself or himself, and then became the creator of everything else that followed. Everything that exists comes from that first emanation. Barbello was or is the mother of all. And as I was preparing for today's show, I was wondering if I've heard from Barbello before, and maybe whether she is also the voice that might appear in today's poetry, the Thunder and Perfect Mind poem that I'm going to be covering today. Because while I was studying the Apocryphon of John, there's a poem within the Apocryphon that people say is a message from Jesus, except it didn't sound like the Jesus that we know. It sounded more like it came from a feminine aspect. And at the time, I wondered if the poem that appears in the Apocryphon of John comes from Sophia, and Sophia's perspective of having made a mistake and forever and eternally being tortured by the revelation of that mistake. But now I'm wondering if it might go even higher than Sophia. And I'll be talking about this a little bit later in today's show. So today we're going to be talking about Thunder Perfect Mind, which was a suggestion by one of my members on Patreon that I look at this. And I was probably going to get to it eventually. But you know what? When I read the poem, I wanted to get to it now. And so, of course, here I am. So whether you're interested in the historical aspects of Gnosticism, or perhaps the spiritual traditions that it represents, or insights that it represents, or maybe just the artistry of its messaging, because this poem in particular is beautifully artistic. There is no avoiding the fact that it's a masterful literary piece of writings, the Thunder Perfect Mind. So before I start looking at the poem itself, let's get some grounding, some sort of context and history and things like that. So Thunder Perfect Mind is one of 13 different codices that make up the Nag Hammadi Library. It's written in Coptic, and it is a little different to the books that appear as part of the library, say, for example, the Apocryphon of John or the Book of Thomas or the Book of Mary. And by the way, links to all of the previous work appear in a playlist called The Gnostics on the Ellie Dreams Unlimited channel, and there's a link to that in the description for today's show if you wanted to do catch-up. So Thunder Perfect Mind is different in one simple respect, and that is that it is simply a poem, and it sits all by itself. And the writer or author or speaker of the poem is unknown. Plus, it was found together with other writings of Hermetic origin, and also with a copy of Plato's written works called The Republic, which were written around 400 years prior to the compilation of the Bible, which helps to potentially date these Gnostic texts and the poem, perhaps, Thunder Perfect Mind. Actually, I think that Plato's work, The Republic, was written in 375 BC, but, pretty close to 400 BC. And so for it to be found together with today's poem is really noteworthy, I think. Now, just for anyone who's not aware of The Republic, Plato's work, it's a philosophical text that explores the nature of justice. It looks at things like the ideal society and ethics and human behavior, the types of individuals that would live and thrive in an ideal society. And it's written in a way that appears like a conversation between Plato and his mentor Socrates and other philosophers. And it delves deeply into questions about society and the qualities of humanity, both individually speaking and also as a collective. It talks about ethics and politics and things like reason and logic and stoicism. And it is very much focused on the pursuit of truth. To be sitting alongside it, sort of separate from the rest of the Gnostic codices, gives today's poem a really special quality. It seems as though Thunder Perfect Mind was different somehow to everything else that was found in the Nag Hammadi Library discovery. So the style of how Thunder Perfect Mind is written or spoken is paradoxical. That'll become very obvious very soon. If you caught my previous episode on the Apocryphon of John, you might recognize the language that's being used, because it's very similar to today's poem. That poem that I had initially thought could be attributed to Sophia in that episode. And I think I talked about it in episode 2 of the 2-part series on the Apocryphon of John. But today the voice of the poet is very much a divine voice, and very likely to be a feminine divine voice. And it brings up questions about the nature of the feminine, what its existence is really about, and the strange opposites about everything that the feminine represents. For example, Thunder Perfect Mind makes statements that are awesome in some respects, that make you want to place the speaker up on a high pedestal. But then as soon as you think that might be the case, the poem immediately switches to something that seems to debase the speaker and hold them in very low regard. It's almost like shame or shamefulness, but then mixed together with pride and conceit. It's really quite a paradoxical text. And it's very beautiful, but it's also very disruptive type of language, particularly for its time. And it speaks about divine power and eternal suffering, all mixed together in a continuously rolling wave of statements. It's also very rhythmically styled as a type of poetry, and it can kind of pull you in, suck you right into it, like an unexpected undercurrent that you might find when you're swimming out at the beach that draws you out and deep and drags you into the ocean. It has that kind of sense about it. You can tell I dig it. It might also at times seem as though it doesn't make any sense. For example, there are lots of phrases like I am he and I am she that kind of leave you wondering whether the speaker is male or female, or perhaps even both simultaneously. In a way, I think the language used in Thunder Perfect Mind appears as it does because it is the best way to demonstrate a theme of cosmic unity combined with individual transcendence. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's so special. So like saying, I am the only one, but also that we are all but one. That kind of paradoxical, kind of strange interrelationship between being singular and being collective. It completely upends the concepts of what is and what isn't reality. It's such a clever poem, it really is. And perhaps that's the reason why Thunder Perfect Mind has been borrowed in quite a number of modern or contemporary artistic representations, like, believe it or not, television ads and movies and music, because it has been. For example, one of the positive ways I think that it has been integrated into modern life comes from the African-American novelist Toni Morrison, who drew inspiration from Thunder Perfect Mind in order to develop themes of paradox and divine feminine power in her writings. For example, she often used simple phrases that were taken from Thunder Perfect Mind, such as, I am war and peace, or I am the first and the last, in order to express and describe the interplay between identity, spirituality, and societal rules and structures and identities that we're all subjected to in life and have always been. Things like race and gender and just the human condition in general. All of the, I guess you could say, irreconcilable kind of concepts of being human can be expressed through the Thunder Perfect Mind paradoxes. And they're very difficult to express until you recognize that the beauty of them comes from the impossibility of them coexisting but somehow existing. And then there's another example of how Thunder Perfect Mind has been used in recent modern expression, which I find to be kind of bizarre and a bit of a waste of good poetry, but, not to those that profited, I guess. And that was that in 2005, Ridley Scott, along with his daughter Jordan Scott, directed a short film called Thunder Perfect Mind, which was actually a television campaign. It was actually a TV ad. And it was part of a wider TV campaign to launch a new fragrance for Prada. Anywho, the film, or actually, the 10-minute long TV ad, was shot in Berlin and featured a model who I'm not familiar with, but I think her name is Daria Webovi, I think is her name. The ad involved following Daria around what was sort of like a hypothetical portrayal of her life, showing various female archetypes that she embodied along the way. Things like mother and daughter, lover, wife, virgin, and the rest of it. I think the idea gave very little regard to the depth of the original poetry because it goes far beyond any of the things that I think could be captured even in a 10-minute TV ad. But it got incredible critical acclaim from television people and set advertising kind of on a higher new path of having to impress everyone. Oops, that's my microphone. And I guess it worked well for Prada sales as well. No doubt. They probably did very well with that 10-minute long TV ad. I'm not sure that it's something that the Gnostics would have welcomed specifically, using their wisdoms and teachings to feed one of the dark forces that they work really hard to repel, like, materialism and greed, just saying, But it just goes to show how special and enigmatic Thunder Perfect Mind truly is. Okay. It's sort of an undying, eternal word. So let's take a look at Thunder Perfect Mind. It's actually an 8-page long poem, so it's quite lengthy. But I think I might read passages and then try to stop where it's natural to stop, and then give you a brief analysis of what each of those sections might be expressing. Of course, do keep in mind that my interpretation is just an interpretation, and as with all of the Gnostic texts, anything that anyone explains about them is going to be different than reading it yourself. It's just going to be an interpretation, regardless of how scholarly the other person's interpretation and examination has been. These are the sorts of texts that need to be read for themselves and need to sort of be digested slowly and with, hunger and pleasure in order to embody those messages. And for the geeks out there who want to know where I'm getting my text from, I'm actually reading from the translation by George W. McRae, which can be found on the website gnosis.org. Okay, so I'm going to take this section by section. I'm going to read some poetry and then I'm going to briefly interpret. And I think it'll be the easiest way to digest the poem rather than just reading 8 pages of poem in one go. So let's begin. I was sent forth from the power, and I have come to those who reflect upon me, and I have been found among those who seek after me. Look upon me, you who reflect upon me, and you hearers hear me. You who are waiting for me, take me to yourselves, and do not banish me from your sight. And do not make your voice hate me, nor your hearing. Do not be ignorant of me anywhere or any time. Be on your guard. Do not be ignorant of me. The first part of this poem appears to be a call for vigilance. The speaker is announcing that they will be speaking from a divine space and place. They seem to assume a noble origin of some kind, and they appear to come with some kind of power that supports them of some kind as well. They warn the reader not to be ignorant of what they're about to say next. And that is that what they're about to say next is the divine truth. That's the implication. So let's get to the next part. For I am the first and the last. I am the honoured one and the scorned one. I am the whore and the holy one. I am the wife and the virgin. I am the mother and the daughter. I am the members of my mother. I am the barren one, and many are her sons. I am she whose wedding is great. and I have not taken a husband. I am the midwife, and she does not bear. I am the solace of my labour pains. I am the bride and the bridegroom. And it is my husband who begot me. I am the mother of my father, and the sister of my husband, and he is my offspring. I am the slave of him who prepared me. I am the ruler of my offspring. But he is the one who begot me before the time on a birthday, and he is my offspring in due time. And my power is from him. I am the staff of his power in his youth, and he is the rod of my old age. And whatever he wills happens to me. I am the silence that is incomprehensible, and the idea whose remembrance is frequent. I am the voice whose sound is manifold, and the word whose appearance is multiple. I am the utterance of my name. So this part of the poem seems to be an enigmatic type of self-portrait. It defies any kind of easy definition though, so it's really not as simple as it sounds. The speaker declares that she is the creator and the creation, the first and the last, sacred but also profane in some ways. She's the nurturer and the offspring. All of these descriptors appear to be contradictions, but what they collectively say is that every aspect of existence actually coexists in a single divine presence with every other aspect of existence. By merging all of these different and contradictory identifying characteristics together, the speaker of this poem is suggesting that the human experience and the cosmic experience are kind of transcendent things. They rise above anything which may be seen as a dividing factor. So it's kind of like an invitation for the reader to recognize the harmony that exists when you integrate elements that may seem to be impossible to reconcile with one another. So I think that it's an introduction that anything is possible, and just when you thought that the road had stopped, it opens again. So let's continue. Why, you who hate me, do you love me, and hate those who love me? You who deny me, confess me, and you who confess me, deny me. You who tell the truth about me, lie about me, and you who have lied about me, tell the truth about me. You who know me, be ignorant of me, and those who have not known me, let me know me. And those who have not known me, let them know me. For I am knowledge and ignorance. I am shame and boldness. I am shameless. I am ashamed. I am strength and I am fear. I am war and peace. Give heed to me. I am the one who is disgraced and the great one. Give heed to my poverty and my wealth. Do not be arrogant to me when I am cast out upon the earth. And you will find me in those that are to come. And do not look upon me on the dung heap, nor go and leave me cast out. And you will find me in the kingdoms. And do not look upon me when I am cast out among those who are disgraced and in the least places, nor laugh at me. And do not cast me out among those who are slain in violence. But I am compassionate and I am cruel. Be on your guard. Do not hate my confidence, and do not love my self-control. In my weakness, do not forsake me, and do not be afraid of my power. So this part of the poem really does sort of suddenly get to the core truth of what it means to exist. It seems like it is saying that humanity has inherent contradictions in our relationship with the divine and the ultimate truth. And that is so true. We really do. The poem is warning us that we have a dualistic type of confession that we make with every breath of our being, which exposes us for who we really are. The way that we love the idea of something, but hate the idea of it being applied to us. Does that sound familiar? We speak truth, but our truth is interwoven with lies. And that all of these contradictions in who we are being confessed by us every moment of the day. They reflect the deep duality that exists within us by declaring So, for example, the speaker is declaring herself to be both knowledgeable and ignorant, shameful and bold, war and peace. She's challenging us to embrace our complexity rather than to desperately cling to the simple judgments that place us on either side of a divide. She's sending a message that we need to recognize that every aspect of existence needs to exist in order for any other aspect to also exist. So to exist, we need to accept what we hate and what we love, because only then can we finally understand ourselves in our relationship with the universe. And by being open to all of it, not just some of it, that's when we're open enough to find the truth. It's kind of beautiful, isn't it? Okay, so let's keep going. For why do you despise my fear and curse my pride? But I am she who exists in all fears and strength in trembling. I am she who is weak, and I am well in a pleasant place. I am senseless and I am wise. Why have you hated me in your counsels? For I shall be silent among those who are silent, and I shall appear and speak. Why then have you hated me, you Greeks? Because I am a barbarian among barbarians? For I am the wisdom of the Greeks and the knowledge of the barbarians. I am the judgment of the Greeks and of the barbarians. I am the one whose image is great in Egypt, and the one who has no image among the barbarians. I am the one who has been hated everywhere, and who has been loved everywhere. I am the one whom they call life, and you have called death. I am the one they call law, and you have called lawlessness. I am the one whom you have pursued, and I am the one whom you have seized. I am the one whom you have scattered, and you have gathered me together. I am the one before whom you have been shamed, and you have been shameless to me. I am she who does not keep festival, and I am she whose festivals are many. I am godless. I am the one whose God is great. I am the one whom you have reflected upon, and you have scorned me. I am unlearned, and they learn from me. I am the one that you have despised, and you reflect upon me. I am the one whom you have hidden from, and you appear to me. But whenever you hide yourselves, I myself will appear. For wherever you appear, I myself will hide from you. Those of you have to it senselessly, take me, understanding from grief, and take me to yourselves from understanding and grief, and take me to yourselves from places that are ugly and in ruin, and rob from those which are good, even though in ugliness. Out of shame take me to yourselves shamelessly, and out of shamelessness and shame upbraid my members in yourselves. And come forward to me, you who know me, and you who know my members, and establish the great ones among the small first creatures. Come forward to childhood, and do not despise it because it is small and it is little. And do not turn away greatnessness in some parts of the smallnessness. For the smallnessness are known as the greatnessness. So yes, I didn't mispronounce. It actually is greatnessness and smallnessness in two different locations there. So this part of the poem creates an even deeper sort of expression of the paradoxes that exist. The speaker begins to blur things together. Did you notice that? Everything that is opposite becomes part of the other side of it. Can you see how clever that is? It's really quite beautiful in the way that it's done. So she does this by questioning the reader's contradictory attitudes towards her, decrying her fear and her pride, like she's not entitled to have either, and asserting that she embodies every aspect of existence, wisdom and foolishness, strength and vulnerability, life and death. But she also starts to invoke some of the cultural references here as well. She refers to Greeks and barbarians and Egyptians. And I think that what she might actually be saying is that the truth sits beyond any single belief system. Or perhaps it's better to say that a single label can't be applied to the truth. So nothing has a fixed definition. Everything is fluid. It's very clever. It really is. Ultimately, I think this passage is a call for humanity to embrace the full spectrum of existence and to see the value of what a society, which is, a society is kind of like a contained aspect of life. And so if you're looking from the perspective of a society, you might be missing or dismissing something because you're sitting within a contained kind of perspective. Because there is more to everything than what you can see from your perspective, regardless of what your perspective is. And that is, I think, a very crucial part of this poem. What it is essentially saying is that the truth is hidden inside the cracks of everything that we think we know, regardless of what we think we know. And in order to find that truth, we need to stop being so sure about what we think we know. She's asking us to embrace our full potential by letting go of what is holding us back, which is the preconception of what good and bad really is. We think we know what is worthy and what is shameful. But she says we don't. We don't know. I mean, this is really profound stuff, don't you think? And the fact that it was used to sell perfume, I mean, God, honestly. Okay, let's keep going. So this next section has quite a few gaps. There seem to be a lot of dotted areas of undeciphered words, and I think that this section of the poem, unfortunately, very sadly, was damaged because it happens frequently throughout this section of the poem. But I'm going to do my best, and I'm just going to read it as though it is complete, and we'll just work with what we've got. Okay. Why do you curse me and honour me? You have wounded and you have no mercy. Do not separate me from the ones whom you have known, and do not cast anyone out, nor turn anyone away. Turn you away, and know him not. What is mine? I know the first ones, and those after them know me. But I am the mind of, and the rest of. I am the knowledge of my inquiry, and the finding of those who seek after me, and the command of those who ask of me, and the power of the powers in my knowledge, of the angels who have been set at my word, and of gods in their seasons by my counsel, and of spirits of every man who existed with me, and of women who dwell within me. I am the one who is honoured, and who is praised, and who is despised scornfully. I am peace, and war has come because of me, and I am an alien and a citizen. I am the substance, and the one who has no substance. Those who are without association are me. Those who are without association with me are ignorant of me, and those who are in my substance are the ones who know me. Those who are close to me have been ignorant of me, and those who are far away from me are the ones who have known me. On the day when I am close to you, you are far away from me. On the day when I am far away from you, I am close to you. I am within. I am of the natures. I am of the creation of the spirits, request of the souls. I am control and the uncontrollable. I am the union and the dissolution. I am the abiding and I am the dissolution. I am the one above and they come to me. I am the judgment and the acquittal. I am sinless, and the root of sin derives from me. I am less in outward appearance, and interior self-control exists within me. I am the hearing which is attainable to everyone, and the speech which cannot be grasped. I am a mute who does not speak, and great is my multitude of words. Hear me in gentleness, and learn of me in roughness. I am she who cries out, and I am cast forth upon the face of the earth. I prepare the bread and my mind within. I am the knowledge of my name, and the one who cries out, and I listen. I appear and walk in seal of my. I am the defense. I am the one who is called truth and iniquity. So there are a couple of things here. Firstly, there appears to be a declaration that those who suffer will see her, whereas those who don't may not. But I think this is also where the speaker starts to talk about a kind of a non-binary sexuality or gender topic as well. She appears to describe herself as being untethered to identity. But it's different here than earlier in the poem. In this section, she makes a lot of reference to the strange mix of love and hate that society has produced towards the feminine. For example, she seems to be talking about how we want women to be beautiful, but if they are beautiful, we resent their beauty. We want women to be sexy, but only sluts are sexy. We want women to be a bit simple-minded because smart women are a threat. But that simple-minded woman still has to find the capacity to do everything, to always be available, to shift identity at a moment's notice. And I think she's also speaking about how the gender element of humanity isn't as important as we seem to think. That there is something higher, like a godlike, angelic type of embodiment, which is a substance that is formless, so obviously genderless. But also, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, she also seems to talk about how the best way to understand her is through suffering. And this is something that rings familiar when it comes to some of the other things that I've been looking at as well. Okay, so this is the last bit that's coming up, and then I'm going to share my overall thoughts on the poem. You honour me, and you whisper against me. You who are vanquished, judge them who vanquish you, before they give judgment against you, because the judge and partiality exist in you. If you are condemned by this one, who will acquit you? Or if you are acquitted by him, who will be able to detain you? For what is inside you is what is outside of you. And the one who fashions you on the outside is the one who shaped the inside of you. And what you see outside of you, you see inside of you. It is visible and it is your garment. Hear me, you hearers, and learn of my words, you who know me. I am the hearing that is attainable to everything. I am the speech that cannot be grasped. I am the name of the sound, and the sound of the name. I am the sign of the letter and the designation of the division. And there are lines missing, light, hearers to you, the great power, and will not move the name to the one who created me, and I will speak his name. Look then at his words and all the writings which have been completed. Give heed to them, you hearers, and you also the angels and those who have been sent, and you spirits who have arisen from the dead. For I am the one who alone exists, and I have no one who will judge me. For many are the pleasant forms that exist in numerous sins, and incontinencies, and disgraceful passions, and fleeting pleasures, which men embrace until they become sober, and go up to their resting place. And they will find me there, and they will live, and they will not die again. So yes, very disappointing. There was a section in there where there are 3 lines missing and then also damage to the next lines in that passage. And so there are sections that may be a little bit difficult to understand. But this final passage contrasts conflicting human behaviours that exist. For example, honouring something outwardly, while we actually live in a whispered world where most of us ignore the very things that we claim to honour. That sounds very familiar, doesn't it? It's like the inner world of being human is a mirror reflection of the outer world. What we really are is what we pretend not to be. How clever is that? So for example, and I'm using an example actually, I'm going to get right off Gnosticism and go into Netflix for a moment. This week I'm actually watching a Netflix series from Spain, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's about a young woman who is gang raped and the process of getting justice that she goes through against the men who are all from very powerful families. And there are a number of different scenes that, as I was reading and sort of digesting Thunder Perfect Mind, I was finding modern examples of that in this movie. And you see, art does imitate life, which is the reason why even when I'm watching something that seems unrelated, I'm picking up little things that show that everything is an expression of what's true, whether it be superficial or deep in nature. But many of the scenes in this Netflix series, and you can find them in any show really, are demonstrating examples of what appear in this poem, where the outward honouring of a principle does not reflect the inward reality when it comes to what humans really are on the inside compared to what they claim to be. So very simple examples in this show that I've been watching is the mother of a son who has very strong views about women and how they should be treated and how they should be treated equally. And she suffers her own torment by being suppressed and abused by the men around her. And she has very strong views about wanting to overcome that and rule. And she's a very powerful woman. However, you'd think that she is a feminist. You'd think that she is someone who is wanting equality for women. Except then her son is discovered that he may be a rapist. And she uses all of her immense power to hide the truth and to protect him. And so what she's actually saying is the same, what she's doing is the same thing that the poem is saying. And that is that I feel very strongly that women should not be treated a certain way. But my son, who may have treated women that way, I will move heaven and earth in order to prevent him from finding or being presented with justice for his behavior. That's the same kind of thing that appears in the poem. We have very strict rules that are theoretical rules, and we apply them to other people. But inside, we're willing to break those rules for ourselves. Can you see? So obviously things haven't changed very much in the past 2,000 to 3,000 years. And so let's look at another example from right now in politics. Okay, so everyone knows politics because, we can't avoid it. It's everywhere. It's in our faces every day, whether we like it or not. And two very clear examples here from both sides of the spectrum. So practically speaking, it's never okay if you are innocent of a crime. It's never really okay, ethically or morally speaking, to accept a presidential pardon. Because when you accept the presidential pardon, what you're saying is that you're guilty. And so if you're innocent, you shouldn't confirm that you're guilty by accepting the pardon. Unless, of course, it suits you to accept that pardon. Because with the pardon, you feel safer. So that makes it okay. And then the second example is that people shouldn't allow their children to profit from their parents' position in government. Because that's cheating. Unless, of course, they're our children, because we love our children and we've worked very hard to give them a good life. And so if we have the power to give them that good life because of the job that we do, then we will do that without any regard for it being right or wrong. It's the right thing to do because it's for our children. Can you see the outward-facing insincerity and the inward-facing truth? Those are some very practical examples that come from today, but which are expressed in a beautiful way in Thunder Perfect Mind. The poem is obviously far more eloquent than any of the examples that I've given, but that's the kind of thing that it's talking about. And then the poem basically ends with something that is very profound because it's very challenging towards the reader. It actually ends with some very, very challenging statements. And I'm going to read these last bits again, just so that I can show you the emphasis here. So it says, "Look then at his words and all the writings which have been completed. Give heed then, you hearers, and you also the angels and those who have been sent, and you spirits who have arisen from the dead. For I am the one who alone exists, and I have no one who will judge me. For many are the pleasant forms which exist in numerous sins, and incontinences, and disgraceful passions, and fleeting pleasures, which men embrace until they become sober, and go up to their resting place, and they will find me there, and they will live, and they will not die again." So just like in the beginning, when the speaker was confirming her divine power, she ends with a similar declaration, saying that no matter how you've lived or how you have treated her, you will ultimately end up in the same place as her. But unlike you, she is going to live forever, which means that she wins. It seems to have a kind of a bit of an edge on it at the end, don't you think? So that was Thunder Perfect Mind. Scholars have been debating about the origins and authorship of Thunder Perfect Mind for pretty much the whole time that we've known about it. Some scholars say that it's a Gnostic text, just like the various Gospels that were found alongside it. These scholars attribute the writings to one of the gods, say for example Barbelo herself or perhaps Sophia from Scythian mythology. Other scholars believe that the poem transcends the Gnostic texts altogether. They attribute it to Egyptian, Greek or Jewish traditions. And there are also references to thunder that appear in other ancient writings, including the Bible, that some believe link the poem to the Garden of Eden and the creation and life of Eve as well, the very first female human according to scripture. There is one very noticeable thing missing from the poem that so far I've seen in all of the other Gnostic texts, and that is the absence of any kind of warning against materialism or the material existence. So Gnosticism seems to have a real disdain for material or earthly existence. It describes humanity and the earth as being a kind of an imprisonment that must be escaped from in order to truly awaken and find freedom. But Thunder Perfect Mind makes no mention of this at all. And that kind of makes me wonder whether it was created by an entity that was never physical, never earthbound, or who never existed in a material sense. Curious, huh? And this leads me to wonder if perhaps Thunder Perfect Mind is a self-reflective analysis of Barbelo, and if the poem was created by Barbelo or is a self-analysis of Barbelo, her identity and her eternal plight, then it achieves something that we have been wondering about, if that's the case, since the dawn of humanity's creation. It seems to suggest that Barbelo, who was the very first thing that was created through thought by the Creator, the very first thing the Creator did was think Barbelo, which brought her into existence. But then the very next thing was that she was disregarded. She was meant to be something more than she ultimately was. Perhaps it was forgotten by the Creator himself, that she was an aspect of the Creator, or himself or itself, and that the Creator has long since been doomed to be incomplete as a result of that sort of disregard that was given to Barbelo. Because of course, if a piece of the Creator is missing, then it isn't complete, is it? And at the same time, Barbelo is left to battle with things like marginalizations in a male-centric divine image that she can't compete with either, or that she can't complete, I think is probably more appropriate. If the male divine, who is deprived of its female aspect, which was once a complementary part of its wholeness, has always been inherently incomplete, while the female divine, who is inherently fragmented as well, is forced to continue on eternally in a kind of wrestling match against all of the contradictions that appear around her. Well, this would certainly explain the manner in which the female qualities of humanity are simultaneously revered and suppressed at the same time. I mean, this is going to sound a little bit silly, but as I was studying the poem, I couldn't really stop thinking about something that seems silly, as I said, in comparison, but I'm going to say it because, I was obviously thinking it for a reason. It's been long known through various studies over a long period of time, and I'm sure that there are fluxes that go one way or the other, but generally speaking, single men tend to live shorter lives than married men, or men who live in a married kind of stable home environment with a partner. And for the purposes of these studies, generally the partnership has been one male and one female, heterosexual. So that's been the assumption that's been made during these studies. So not very LGBTQ. But for the sake of making my point, the single men tend to live shorter lives than married men, or the equivalent of marriage. And in those same studies, it's also been shown that women who are single live longer than women who are living in a married type of environment with a man. So married men live longer and single women live longer. And I know that it's such a small, inconsequential thing compared to this big story about the first emanation and this big whopping poem, Thunder Perfect Mind. But I couldn't stop thinking about it as I was reading the poem. So many women are so much stronger than the world wants them to be. And the world really, if we're being very honest here, the world really wants women to be strong enough and capable enough and beautiful enough to make life enjoyable for the rest of us. And when I say the rest of us, I'm talking about stereotypes here. So men, basically. The whole long, boring concept about traditional gender roles and places in society and everything that it implies about society. Women who are strong are often feared and resented by men, but even by other women. But interestingly, they also live longer as well, despite all of their lifelong battles, or perhaps because of those battles. And men are far less stronger than the world wants them to be. And I say this because it appears that the world wants men to be strong enough to rule everything, to make all of the decisions, to fight one another and win wars, and to be at the front of everything and the top of everything, and to control everything. Can you see what I mean? And of course, no man can be everything to everything all of the time. And so, although it seems like a silly comparison to make against the poem, for some reason for me it just sort of, it fits. It feels like what Thunder Perfect Mind is really saying, if I was to shorten it to just a few words, is that the male is never going to achieve what he needs to be complete until he achieves his feminine aspect. And the feminine will ultimately prevail if she is continually suppressed, because that constant battle to be seen as whole is what gives the feminine strength, and it bestows upon her this concept of eternal life. My name is Ellie, and you can find me at Ellie Dreams Down Under on YouTube. In today's episode, I referenced previous episodes of Gnosticism that I've done on the show, and for anyone who wants to catch up, I've included a link to all of those Gnostic episodes that appear in a playlist, which is also a podcast called The Gnostics, in the description for today's show, if you have a mind to catch up on any of those episodes. Thank you to everyone who is watching or listening today on one of KGRA's broadcasting platforms. If you'd like to join the KGRA viewership family, just go to live.kgradb.com and put in promo code Ellie to get 30% off your subscription. That's it for today. It's been a pleasure. Until next time.